So, hi there. My name is Brent Smith, and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and this is the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. And I'm out in the woods trying to look for a place where the wind is relatively subdued. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but it is blustering. Got to be 20-30 miles an hour anyway, maybe sustained 10 miles an hour. And when you're outside, it is really difficult to hear. The wind sounds like a daggum freight train running by the camera, and it washes me out. Some might say that that's a good thing. Some might not. I don't like it personally. I like my own voice. I don't know, whatever. At any rate, today we're going to be talking about, I know one topic, maybe two. The first is the Florida shooting, the aftermath of the Florida shooting. No, it's not going to be about the Florida shooting again. Tired of talking about that at this point. It's going to be the aftermath and the student walkout, and we'll get into that. And if I've got time, the Conor Lamb election in Pennsylvania and not what it means to things, but the conservative Democrat Conor Lamb, how things are going to go for this guy. So we'll talk about those two topics, hopefully, today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast.
You are listening?
No, you limey. They're not listening. They're watching.
The Common Constitutionalist, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, free from the prying eyes of establishment-like helicopters.
So hi there, welcome back. I got my notes. Hopefully I'll stick with them. I've been pretty good about that, I think, lately. And this episode of the Weekend Video Podcast by me is entitled, After the Florida Shooting Comes the Borg. That'll make sense, hopefully. And the Pennsylvania election, special election, if I get to it. So, okay, the Florida shooting. No, we're not going to talk about the actual Florida shooting again, and wham, all right? Well, mostly not. No, we're not going to talk about the actual Florida shooting. We're going to talk about the aftermath. I want to talk about leftists, the hive mentality of leftists, and why and how they do what they do. And yeah, we're going to talk about Star Trek, and it's going to make sense. Yeah, it'll make sense to you. So, okay, first off, none of these leftist events, as we hopefully know by now, ever occur. They never happen naturally. They are classic, never let a crisis go to waste scenarios. Every single time, that's what it is. And as I've said before, it's like the Soros people have some sort of central database or central filing system somewhere on this planet, and that they can access during every one of these crisis events. And they've already been war gamed, it seems like. So they know exactly what to do, a call to action. So if it's a hurricane, you do this. If it's a flood, you blame this group. Funding cuts, taxes, react this way. Mass shooting, do exactly what they're currently doing right now. It's all been scripted, and I think it's all been war gamed. So if we say this, they'll say that, and so on and so forth. And it just seems, it just happens too fast to be spontaneous. There's no chance in hell. There's no way. Can't be. So you isolate and blame in this particular mass shooting. You isolate and blame everyone other than the real causes. And the real causes are weak individuals who've never had to deal with stress, and government agencies who do nothing but screw things up and don't have to be accountable for anything. That's what they do. Those are the two things that should be blamed, is the weak-kneed willies that actually do the act, and the government agencies that screw up when they're before, during, and after. Okay? It ain't the guns, but that's the way it goes. And I'm not going any further into that because I could spend the next 5 hours doing it, and I'm not doing it. That's not the purpose of this. So anyway, so I've heard people ask, again, how these radicals know what to do so quickly. How do they spring into action so fast? And the quick answer is they don't really need to be told what to do, just the best way to go about doing it. All the radical leftists think alike. You hear these things about talking points, and sure, there's talking points, but for the most part, the underlying theme, they don't need talking points because they all think alike. It's like, here we go, it's like the Borg collective in the Star Trek series Next Generation. And just stay with me, don't turn this thing off. I have a point to make, and I think it's going to make sense to you. I sure hope so, because otherwise you've wasted your time. All right, so everyone is kind of plugged in to a central brain that feeds off of it. And if you already think alike, it's easy for this Borg entity, leader, so to speak, to just issue an order to deliver a strike package, like Strike Package Delta or some such nonsense. Okay, so Strike Package Delta goes out, and it's all about gun confiscation and gun control. Whatever the event, if it involves a gun, the strike package is to dictate to everyone to always steer the narrative back to taking away guns. That's what it is. Of course, that doesn't count if it involves a shooter of color. Then the order is given for strike package Echo or something like that. Blame the system, all right? So, okay. So you're probably saying, what the heck is the Borg, and why the crap why would I care? Why would I give a crap about the Borg? It's Star Trek, and I don't like Star Trek. A lot of people don't, all right? You don't need to give a crap, other than to agree that art imitates life, assuming you think that Star Trek is art. And it's entertainment, which is a form of art, so just bear with me, shall we? If you're not familiar with the Borg, and most people have at least heard the term, here we go. I'm a Star Trek fan, I'm a Star Wars fan, I like all that sci-fi crap. It's good entertainment, I just happen to like it. So the Borg, this entity called the Borg, was introduced on TV and the movies during the Star Trek Next Generation series starring Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. All right? So you've seen Patrick Stewart in lots of stuff, the bald British actor guy. He's pretty good, and he did a good job as Jean-Luc. So it's never really explained how this Borg came about, but the conventional wisdom of Trekkies and whatnot is that they were an advanced humanoid civilization who grew tired of not being perfect. Okay? Remember that. They grew tired of not being perfect, so in an effort to achieve perfection, they fly through space in this giant cube. It's a freaking huge cube, assimilating all species they come across. When they come across a group of people, or whatever they are, they send a simple message that, quote, "We are the Borg, resistance is futile," unquote, followed by a declaration that the target in question will be assimilated and its, quote, "biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to the Borg collective." All right? Does this sound familiar? Does it sound eerily familiar that this art is imitating life? What's the purpose of the progressive leftist movement? All right? It is, what's it always been? It's been to find utopia, right? To perfect human society on earth, because of course there is no God and therefore there's no heaven, right? So the only way to achieve this is through a collective where all minds think alike and work together toward the same goal. Does it sound familiar now? The Borg, leftist progressives. Sound familiar? It should. We're going to take a break on that note. I'll be right back to continue talking about leftist progressives and the Borg. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
All right. So back to the leftists, I mean the Borg, one and the same, frankly. Like I said, the Borg shows up in their big cube in space, and they make a pronounce that we are the Borg, assimilation, resistance is futile, and then they assimilate all the beings and they plug them into the Borg collective. All right. So the assimilated beings, species, whoever they happen to be, they're all outfitted so they can be connected or hardwired into the central communal brain. Again, does this sound familiar at all? I mean, other than the hard wiring and the, and the physical assimilation and the look of the Borg, which are freaky looking humanoid, machine, cyborg type of looking things, and they're all gray. I don't know why the hell they're gray, but whatever. And what happens is they get on this big cube ship, the newly assimilated beings, and they are essentially just remain connected until a portion of them are activated to perform a task. There were scenes on the show that showed the good guys just walking by these connected Borg drones, having no fear of them attacking because they're all connected to the communal brain, and they were effectively kind of in stasis, like, sleep. And the good guys understood that these beings wouldn't do anything until the collective master or whatever would command them to do something, because the good guys knew that these Borg people, once they're assimilated, they don't think on their own, and they can't literally physically do anything on their own. They have no autonomy at all right? So once disconnected, they knew exactly what to do, these Borg, because they were no longer, they had no longer any individual thoughts. All thoughts were shared throughout the collective. And again, does this sound familiar at all? Okay? Listen, just watch NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, whoever. They all sound the same. They may not look the same. They may not look gray and robotic and cyborgish, if that's a word. But they all basically sound the same, and they're saying the same things. And it's not just that they get a list of talking points, is that these people are part of the Borg collective. They all think the same, they all act the same, and they all hang around with the same people, the same collective. And so that's why everything sounds the same on these networks. It's not just talking points that go out from Soros's Media Matters or Open Society or whoever it happens to be. That's not entirely it. These people are the Borg. They are the collective, and they think and act the same. That's why. Wow. Go back in time just a little bit. Lois Lerner and the IRS targeting of Tea Party groups during Obama's re-election in 2012, right? Most people on our side were convinced that they were going to trace it back and find the Barack Obama smoking gun, and that's going to get rid of Obama. Okay, that it wasn't just going to be Lois Lerner acting on her own. But we who understand the concept, the Borg collective concept, knew better all along. Obama didn't ever have to get his hands dirty because he's already satisfied that he hired the right-minded Borg drone to do the job in Lerner. She didn't need to be instructed into what to do because all their minds are already connected. She already knew what to do because she thinks exactly like Obama. She thinks exactly like Hillary Clinton. She thinks exactly like Eric Holder. Or she thinks exactly like Loretta Lynch. Or go down the freaking line. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. They're all the collective. They're all the Borg. All she needed to be was to be activated, like a sleeper cell, or like I said, part of the Borg, where they get disconnected. They already have their uploaded task, Delta, Echo, whatever it happens to be, and they go out and they perform it because they already know what to do. So I didn't compare Lois Lerner to a terrorist sleeper cell. I compared her to a Borg sleeper cell. Is that better? I don't know. Whatever. All right. So the same could be said about Eric Holder and the Fast and Furious gun running thing. All right. It's the same deal. You weren't going to trace that back to Obama either, because all the collective leader has to do is issue an order to go do this, and they already know what to do because they think and act alike. There's no direction that needs to be done here. There's no specifics that need to be ironed out or written down or whatever. There's none of that dead drop stuff, spy stuff. None of that stuff has to occur because it's already up here. They all think alike. Sheesh. And Holder and Lerner and all these people, all they ever needed to be was disconnected from the Borg collective and activated with their task. That's it. Scary, ain't it? Yeah, it is scary. So, little David Hogg, actually, crunching, I'm not going to take a break. So, little David Hogg, the little high school kid, he hasn't been plugged in for decades. So he needs to be coached as to what to say and how to act and everything else, because he hasn't been indoctrinated into the Borg collective quite yet. But he's on his way to becoming fully assimilated into the collective, so fear not. He needed the help of Empower, who financed and organized the kids, another Soros-funded group. What a stunner. Actually, I could probably take these off because it's now cloudy out. It's just getting better. Woo, that's bright. Okay. So the collective couldn't allow unassimilated children to organize such an important crisis opportunity. So remember, with each crisis, not only comes the opportunity to advance the progressive leftist agenda, but get them one step closer to utopia, but also to assimilate more into the collective, like Hogg and his buddies. The more who are assimilated, the closer they get to the perfect society. And believe me, these leftists really do think in these terms. They honestly do. This isn't bullcrap. And we're not just making this stuff up. They really do think this way. They think that society would be perfect if only fill in the blank. You know, there's always going to be a boogeyman to get in their way to blame why they don't have the perfect utopian society yet. That's just the way it works. All right, so I guess that's all I got to say. Basically, the bottom line, art imitates life. Star Trek, although most would say it's not art, it is entertainment, which is a form of art. And when you look back, go watch the movie, First Contact, I think it is. First Contact, Star Trek Next Generation. It's actually a movie. And watch it, and it's scary, freaking close to the progressive leftist movement. It's unbelievable. They all think the same. They all have this beehive mentality. Look back at Woodrow Wilson with his beehive mentality stuff. He actually said that. So anyway, we're going to take another break. We'll come back, and I'll do this quick Conor Lamb thing. The guy who won the election, the special election in Pennsylvania, whoop-de-freaking-do. He'll be a congressman for a few months, and then I guess he'll decide what else to run for. I don't know. So we'll be right back. So I'm out in the woods here, and we'll do our last segment. I gotta put my glove back on because it ain't warm out, but I still would prefer doing this outside to in. Spring's right around the corner, and we're supposed to get another nor'easter up here in New England next week. I think after spring, so it's gonna be great. We're gonna get slammed with another huge freaking snowstorm. It's sucks to be us, I guess. Whatever. Okay, so Conor Lamb. He's either a fraud, he's a liar, or he's monumentally naive. Those are the three, okay? Democrat Conor Lamb, the guy who won the special congressional election in PA, in Pennsylvania. I'm going to guess the first two because one would have to suspend all reason to think that a politician of any kind, of any experience at all, would be this gullible. There's no way, all right? So, the bottom line is there are no conservative Democrats. There hasn't been one in a long time. A conservative Democrat could not get elected normally. This special election notwithstanding, the Republican kind of stunk anyway, typical, that they put up some dope. But at any rate, Conor Lamb is a fraud and a phony. Or he is monumentally gullible. We'll see. But I'll be borne out to be right, one way or the other. So, Who do people think when they think of a conservative, reasonable Democrat? They think of the poster boy of reason, Joe Manchin, right? Yeah, Joe Manchin. He's great. He's a reasonable Democrat we can get along with, and he's relatively conservative on issues, all right? Well, he's not. All you got to do is go back to the Conservative Review, Liberty Score. You find Joe Manchin. He has a letter grade of F, great, on the conservative scale, so he's a liberal, and he has a percentage of conservative votes of 18 out of 100%. So this guy may talk a good game, he may be photogenic and reasonable, and he goes on Fox News and everything's wonderful, and he seems like a good guy, but he is a liberal who votes in, for the most part, lockstep with Pelosi and Schumer and the rest of the liberal Democrats. That's who this guy is. That's who Manchin really is. So don't get fooled by this nonsense that Joe Manchin's some sort of reasonable individual, because he ain't. He might sound it, but talk is cheap. Votes are what count. I don't care what you say. Talk is cheap. Votes are what count. And I can't get this daggum paper. Ah! Sticking me off, bro. There we go. Glued together or something. Alright, so back to Lamb Chop. Conor Lamb. He's a Marine. Tough guy. But again, he's a fraud and a phony, or he's monumentally gullible. So here we're gonna go. We're going to circle all the way back to the freaking Borg Collective again. After he gets to Washington, one way or the other, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are going to hook him up to the Borg Collective consciousness, whether he wants to or not. Remember, resistance is futile, beep boop bop, all right? And he will become part of the collective. One way or the other, he's going to become part of the collective. Either that, or he's going to be eliminated politically, so to speak. All right, no one's going to physically take him out, but he will be eliminated as a viable candidate for the next election. They're not going to put up with somebody who doesn't vote in lockstep, like Joe Manchin, who seems like Mr. Reasonable, but when you look at his voting record of 18% out of 100% conservative, yeah, he's a Democrat. He ain't no conservative. Conor Lamb's going to be the exact same way. And that's all I've got to say about any of this nonsense. This is Brent Smith, the Common Constitutionalist, wishing you a blessed balance of the weekend. And I'll talk at you hopefully next week, if we don't get buried up to our in snow again. See ya.